Oops. I hit that really fast. Hi. I was going to show you this.
Oh, pretty. I like it.
Yes. Welcome to episode 52. We're going to talk about publishing paths and the differences between indie and traditional, which is something that we have talked about before, but I think the world evolves quickly, the publishing world. And so it's definitely worth revisiting. It's something we get a lot of questions about. So here we are.
Here we are. We are here.
Hello. How are you?
And look, let me see. The Keurig is gone from behind me.
Very nice.
My husband is still in my
back?
office.
Oh.
Yeah, well, my husband is still in my office, but I have my kitchen back. So the Keurig is back in the kitchen. And
well, that is good.
What you can't see around me is that I'm surrounded by boxes, but it's all going to be okay. It will be okay. Fine.
Well, I'm impressed. You haven't sold your house and you haven't bought a house, and yet you're pretty much ready to move. We have bought a house and haven't packed a thing. I have called a couple painters because I was inspired by your story, and I was like, I will also have some painting done in the new house before we move in. It is ridiculously expensive. Did you know this?
Yes, but I hate painting, so I am more than willing to pay for it.
Well, I am not particularly fond of painting, but my husband is like, oh, we can paint it. I'm like, well, so by we, you mean me? Because I can't think of a house we've ever lived in where you have painted anything. And he's like, oh, we can paint all the kitchen cabinets. I'm like, we don't like painting kitchen cabinets.
Well, and that's a special skill. That's not like just normally painting a wall
why we don't
painting
like
a ceiling.
The other thing we are not willing to do is the new house, like a lot of modern houses these days, because we looked at a bunch, seem to have like 30-foot walls in one room, where you have like the open foyer and the big open living room. And some people don't think that they are young enough to climb up on 30-foot ladders and get like this along the ceiling to get the line nice and straight. And he was like, well, I'll do that part. He is afraid of heights. And I was like, yeah, so when one of us falls off the ladder or the scaffolding you are proposing to build on our stairs, don't you think that the hospital bills will cost more than it would have cost to just pay the painter? He's like,
Well, and there is an emotional labor involved of the stress. You've got to figure in the cost of your emotional labor and stress versus these people show up, they do it. They rarely argue with you about it. And you don't have to go to bed with them that night.
That's true. When I painted kitchen cabinets once before, there were fights because I don't especially like sanding, and I thought I had done a good job. But some people who I know thought that there should be more sanding.
Yes.
Anyway,
we have, after over 20 years together, one of the keys to our marriage is hiring movers, because we do not move things well together at all, because there's discussion.
It's no fun. It's hard. It's a mess. Yeah. His mother just called me this morning and was like, you remember that my husband ruptured his Achilles tendon twice in a row and has been on crutches. He finally is back in the boot, so he's kind of hobbling around again. But we're going to be moving in the next month. And his mother was like, well, so you had this neck thing and your husband, I really don't want him to hurt his foot again. And I was like, no, I don't either. And she was like, so maybe you should hire somebody to move you. And I was like, oh, yeah. Okay, we'll talk about this later. Anyway, moving fun. Yeah.
Yes. And that's just going to be our lives for a while.
Yes. I'm going to blow my nose. I'm sorry. It's
okay.
running.
All the moving.
Well, that's why we're not going to be here, because that's all we'll be talking about.
Yes. So yes, we've got this show, and we got one more show, and then we've got the summer hiatus, and then hopefully when we come back, we'll have like all new backdrops and good painted walls, and I will not be surrounded by boxes. I have to point out, because it makes it sound like I'm really prepared, all of the stuff we are boxing up is stuff that my very dear friend, who is our realtor, came through and went, okay, that needs to go, that needs to go, that needs to go, that needs to go. So all of our like getting everything out is more, we need to make the house look good for it to show.
Oh, yes.
So that's what we've been, that's what we've, been boxing up and finding all this stuff that my husband's like, do we really need this?
I know.
Have you touched this in the past 10 years? Now, I do have to say, to his credit, because I have a couple of books.
You do.
Maybe 300-400, whatever. I have some books, He has not once complained about any of the boxes of books. As long as I put them in small boxes that he can carry the whole box, he has not once said, do you really need these books? He has not said that at all. He's a very smart man.
Great guy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, normally I try to use that if you haven't worn it in a year philosophy. But that
doesn't count this year.
No. So now I'm looking in my closet but I might wear that still. And I don't know. Also, I gained weight this year. So now I'm looking at things like, it doesn't fit now, but it might fit, like when COVID's over, maybe I'll do more stuff. And then I don't know.
My thing that I'm looking at with that is I might get to go to a writer's conference again someday. Yay. I might actually go talk to people that aren't in this house and aren't related to me. So
I am going to Vegas. I'm going to 50 Books in November. Marika and I are going to go.
That's going to be fun. And we get to meet Marika next week.
Oh, on here. Yeah. I'm like, is she coming to visit you?
No, she's not coming to
log. I don't know her. What do you mean?
No, I get to meet her, I should say, and our lovely people who watch with us, with Julie, Brooke, and Kate. Hi.
Hi,
We're
guys.
Glad you're here.
I suppose we should get on with it.
We should. We should talk. We should talk about publishing. So
we said we were going to do that.
Pathways to success. Let's do that.
Well, pathways to success, pathways to publishing. Let's leave it at that, because Delancey has published a lot of books, but I'm not sure about the success.
Okay. So tell us about Delancey's journey, and we're going to kind of springboard. That's what I'm looking for off of that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, so let's see. I mean, like everyone knew I was going to write a book someday. And when I finally got around to deciding to do it, I was actually editing for a tiny romance press. And so I didn't have an agent. I didn't know how to write a book. I was editing romance, so I had seen some of that. I was a lit fic snob, so I was sure whatever I was going to write was going to be very important. But once I started editing romance, I was like, you know what, maybe this would be a good way for me to learn how to plot a book, how to build a story. So I wrote what I thought was a romance. It was not. And I gave it to the editor at the little publishing house I was working for. And she was like, well, the writing is good. There's no story here, but we can probably make one. And I was like, okay. So she really helped me figure out they gave me a contract. And through the editing process, we made what actually became Men and Martinis, which is the first book in the Gotham Girls series. So I chose to go traditional. I mean, kind of traditional. It was a really small press. And honestly, they still exist. I'm not going to tell you who it is. They never paid me for editing, for publishing, I wouldn't ever recommend it. And having had a little bit of experience with other authors who were at similar small presses, heard very similar stories. So that is almost a separate part of traditional publishing, because you don't need an agent to submit. Most of the time, the terms are often very different than what you get with a bigger publishing house. So that's maybe a third avenue, but I would highly recommend talking to authors at a small press before you ever sign anything. Mm-hmm. That said, I learned how to write a book there because the editor was actually very good. But the next thing I did was decide that, because then indie was kind of becoming a thing. So I was like, oh, well, I don't need this. I will just independently publish. And so I put out a couple books that way and learned the process. I had no idea what I was doing. The covers were terrible. It was a mess. And that was not super successful. Although, because there was nobody doing it in 2013, I did make some money. It was kind of crazy, actually. And I got a book bub. And so that was a learning experience, too. And then my mom was like, but when are you going to write a real book? And I was like, you're right. I should get an agent. So then I started pounding the pavement and I got an agent. And we started publishing, I guess it was under the Peer series, Without Words and Without Promises. She sold to Entangled, which was the first. And somewhere in there, I published with Karina UK, which was also one of those submit yourself, you don't need an agent. So the first like real trad publishing deal that I got was with Entangled. And that was good. It was a good process. I had a developmental edit, I had a line edit and a copy edit, and I got to consult on the cover and everything. So I think that was much more what you think of when you think of a traditional deal. And then the next thing that we did was with Random House, the Love Swept imprint, we sold Mr. Big to. And that was a really neat process too, because they're a big publishing house. Neither of those deals was print. They were both digital only, which was disappointing to my mother mostly. But also a little bit to me. And then after Mr. Big, I think I sent her a few more things. I really wanted to publish with Mont Blake. Like that was my entire goal. And they turned down a couple of things with us. And she said the next thing we submitted to them had to be awesome. And I just kind of never got that thing to her, I guess. And at that point, she came back to me, and this was probably 2016, 17, I think, and said, you know what, Nancy, unless you are, Lauren Blakely or Laura Lynn Page or Nora Roberts, romance is dominated by the indies. And I can't sell a mid-list author basically at this point to any of these romance houses because they can't compete with the people that are independently publishing so successfully. So I really suggest you go look at that again. And so we didn't part ways necessarily, but I haven't sent her anything else. And I just started indie publishing. And that was, I think, when Mr. Match started coming out. And so I found a lot more success than I had seen before by really taking charge of my own career. And we can talk about the reasons why I was excited to do that and the things I liked and didn't like about each side. But that's my journey.
And I like that because you have a little bit of taste of everything. You've got a little bit of the small press, a little bit of the querying, a little bit of dealing with an agent, a little bit of going indie. And so that would make you, by today's market, because things have changed so much, that you would be considered hybrid.
I don't think I'd be hybrid now, but I was definitely at a point because I had self-published and I had an agent and traditional deals, which is limiting, honestly, because if you have traditional deals, there are often non-competes in place that dictate, and I don't know if this is true as much with traditional, in romance at least, because rapid release is such a big thing. But I wasn't allowed to publish within something like 30 or 60 days on either side of the books that I had coming out with the traditional houses, which if you look at the self-publishing, the Amazon cliff, if you can't publish every 90 days or so, then the algorithms don't favor you and you're fighting an uphill battle again. So it wasn't helpful being a hybrid at the time that I was. It may be different now.
Well, I know that some of my clients who are hybrid and some friends that I have that are hybrid, their issue is not so much the timing of the publishing as the restraints on the non-compete clause of if you are published in romantic suspense, traditionally, you are, I hate to say forbidden, I don't think that's the right word, restricted, I guess is a better word, from indie publishing anything that's romantic suspense. You can go indie publish a YA fantasy, but your romantic suspense world belongs to them until
that is the clause that you have to look at if you're going to sign a traditional deal and want to self-publish, because they put all kinds of stuff in there. And depending on who you talk to, it's the Wild West, and certain IP lawyers and publication, lawyers that specialize in publishing will tell you that they don't have any right to stipulate what you can and can't publish unless they are publishing it for you. But they are still in there, those clauses. And I never had one that said I couldn't write in the same genre. Mine said things like same character, same world, and within a certain amount of days of publication.
So when you're looking at the traditional thing, knowing what clauses are in there, knowing what they're going to require, what they can restrict, all of that is super, super important, which is why you have the agent.
Right. That's what I was going to say. If you have a good agent who knows what your goals are as an author and who understands that you also want to indie publish, if you do, then they should be guiding the contract negotiation to allow you to have the best career possible.
Right. Which is where the disadvantage of being with a small press can come in, because you don't have that agent as the mediator there, and you're trying to figure out their contract and their clause without the advantage of somebody who knows all the ins and outs of it.
Right.
So that's something to consider.
The other side of that is that tiny presses are very unlikely to come sue you, but at the same time, you don't want to get on the wrong side of any contract, because you just never know what could happen. And, on the off chance that they do have some powerhouse attorney, who knows, you could lose your house. So
right. And the goal is for you to make money. That's what we're trying for. So exactly. If we're stepping back and we're saying, okay, we're showing up the, oh, hold on. There's a question and I don't have my glasses on.
What is the Amazon cliff? And if you're someone who really can't put out a book every 3 months, can you be successful doing indie? Or rather, what does it take to be successful in a less frequent publishing cadence? We can definitely talk about that. And let's kind of work through some of the trad versus indie type stuff. And then we'll talk about advantages and disadvantages of each. And that will definitely be part of the indie discussion. If you can hang in there with us, Jane.
Yeah, just give us a few minutes. So if we're talking for new people and they're like, I'm going to write a book, I want to be published with Penguin or Random House or Source Books or all that. Let's talk for a second about the process of how you do that now. Like, what does that look like? What steps do we do? That kind of thing.
Well, so the first thing is write a book.
Yes,
and if you aren't sure exactly what's marketable and what's not, then you go to the publishing house that you think you would like to work with, or go look at a few in the genre that you think you're going to write and read as much as you can and figure out what the common factor is in those books and titles. So assuming that you've done all that and you have written a book to market or to the genre that you're going to look at, your next step is to query agents. So you want to look at authors who are publishing in similar genres and find out who represents them. You want to go to Query Shark and do some searches to see which agents are accepting new clients. And you want to look at hashtag MSWL on Twitter, manuscript wish list, because agents are actively posting what they are looking for. And the last thing you want to do is send a generic query letter to a whole bunch of agents and it's not a spaghetti against the wall kind of proposition. It's a super, super targeted marketing letter that you're going to send to these people. And your goal is to sell them the idea of this book that you have written and make them want it so badly that they're going to offer to represent it for you.
Yes. And so you've got to do your research on your agents. You have to make sure that, first of all, they rep what you're trying to send. And all of the agents, when I was querying, everybody has very specific requirements. This one wants the first 3 chapters. This one wants the first 10 pages. This one wants a synopsis. This one doesn't want you to send any samples unless they ask for it. And
I think that's typical. Most want the query letter and nothing attached, nothing pasted until they say, hey, that sounds interesting. Send me 3 pages or whatever.
Well, and a lot of them now have a form that you copy and paste your query letter into their form. And some of them have where they will have you paste the sample directly into the email or directly into the form. So you're not attaching anything, but it's paste the first 10,000 words or whatever. So you have to be very careful to pay attention to their instructions, because they get literally thousands of these queries. And we'll go through and, immediately, there used to be a hashtag on Twitter that was 10 queries and 10 tweets. And agents would be like, query number 1, I don't even rep this. Query number 2, doesn't
spelled my name wrong.
Yeah, spelled my name wrong. Doesn't catch my attention. Addressed me as sir, and my name is Janie. And so you've got to be very specific. And so, like you were talking about the blanket marketing, you can't do that. You have to take the time, and it does take time.
It takes forever. You need a spreadsheet.
Yes, keep a spreadsheet. Query Tracker, I think it's querytracker.net will let you keep track of who you sent it to, and then you wait. Because it can take anywhere from the fastest query response I ever got was 48 hours. And the longest one was over 200 days. Like I had completely forgotten.
You're probably still waiting for. Because I mean, some just don't respond, period. And you can ping them again or look on their website, because sometimes it says, if you don't hear from me, that means I'm not interested. And some will say, if you don't hear from me, contact me in 60 days, but just send me a, hey, what's up thing. Like they're very specific. So you really, really have to do your homework, because the easiest way to get a no is to break one of their little rules. And the reason they have their little rules is because they are so overwhelmed.
Well, and don't expect any kind of personal feedback.
Jane says, and get ready to be sad a lot and then get over it quick.
Yes, be prepared for that. But don't expect them to be like, I loved your story, this is what you need to improve. Or don't expect to be able, if they reject you and you email them and are like, hey, can you give me the reasons for the rejection? No, they're not going to do that. They don't have enough time. Most of the time you're going to get a form letter rejection of this didn't catch my attention. Good luck. The best of luck in all your publishing endeavors, which was always my favorite closing.
It is disheartening and demoralizing, and you need a lot of wine if you're going to do this.
Yes, it takes a really long time. Amanda said she has one that took over a year.
And it doesn't always. Like, you'll always hear the story from the person who you started this journey with, who's like, oh, my dream agent got back to me in 24 hours and they're dying to read my book. And you're like, you know what? I don't want to hear about that.
Cheers.
Yes.
Now, Amanda says that she did give me a good review of why she didn't like it, so it was worth the wait, I think. And sometimes agents will give some kind of feedback, but the main thing is don't email them back and ask for the feedback, because if they didn't give it to you, they're not going to. And so after you get the agent or you get the query letter set out and you follow their very specific things, then they send you a request. That's when they want you to actually send them chapters or samples, or sometimes a full request, which means they want the whole thing. And generally they want a synopsis, especially if they only ask for a couple of chapters. They want a synopsis, which we all despise. And then you wait again.
So let's assume that we've gotten through that initial and they're like, hey, I'm interested. They may ask for a revise and resubmit. If they think that it's just almost good enough, but there's a couple things, then they might want to see how you deal with feedback, which is like a test. So you immediately go and do whatever they said to do and try your very best and send it back to them and wait again. But let's assume we got through all of that and the agent makes you an offer, which is basically, I offer to represent you to publishers. There's no money involved. They don't ask you for any money, and you don't get anything from them except representation, because the whole deal with the agent, reputable agents at least, is that they make money when you make money. And typically they take 15%. So any deal that you get, any royalties that you receive, they will take 15%, and the royalties go to them and then they pay you. So they're handling all your money. They almost become like your accountant in a way.
But you should not have to pay them. Like if an agent is like, oh, give me $4,000 and I can make your book a #1 seller. No. That's what I need to put together the package that I'm going to shop to these publishing houses. That's not somebody you want to work with.
Yeah. Same with any small press that asks you for money is not a reputable small press. You should never be paying a publisher. They are supposed to pay you.
Yes, they're making money off of you.
Yeah. So I think everybody knows that, but just in case. So that's the process. And then, sorry, go ahead.
Well, one thing I wanted to point out is I've seen a lot of debate on Facebook and other social media about, well, I'm going traditional publishing. I don't need an editor. If you are querying and if you are sending out your first example of this is my writing, I strongly recommend having that first book edited. Because
in the future, maybe not when you're a known quantity.
after you get your deal, yes, the publishing, because they're like, oh, publishing houses have their own editors. Yes, they do. But you've got to be able to get to them.
Yeah.
And one of the, back when I was entering contests, one of the feedback I got that really stuck with me was, this story is excellent, but your lack of grammar and punctuation will keep you from getting published.
Oh, that's harsh.
And because I'm the story editor, Nancy is your grammar and punctuation person. And so if I would have gone ahead to query that story, I would have been sure that I at least got it line edited and got it copy edited, because I can handle the story, but I don't know if that comment goes there or not. And in the person they gave me excellent feedback on the other thing, but that line stuck in my mind for so long of, if you were up against all of these other people and you have a great story and I have a great story, but my story has grammar and punctuation mistakes and your story doesn't, and they can only pick one of us, they're going to pick the person who takes the less work.
Right. And it is a competition. And so anything that distracts from the value of your proposition is going to hurt you. And
yes,
you don't want to lose. But think how many writers are querying these agents. Think how many samples they ask for. And, they can only take 1 or 2 new clients. So yeah, it's hard.
But in our magic world, the agent is going to represent us. What happens?
The agent has to, yes. So then they talk with you about hopefully, if they're a good agent, they talk with you about your hopes and dreams and your goals. And they find out whether this book is a series. What do you have envisioned? Are you planning to use a pen name? All that good stuff. And then once they understand what it is they're selling, they basically start making proposals to publishing houses. They send out samples, they talk you up, they explain why this is a book that's going to be amazing. And everybody hopes for the best. And then you wait some more. And then they report to you what they have heard from all the different publishing houses and editors. And sometimes you'll get another revision request, like, oh, they're really considering this book, but they want to see they want your heroine to have a black dog named Poodles and like whatever. So you go rewrite again. And then they say no. Yes, so there's more. And then hopefully they sell it and they come back to you and say, we have an offer. And you can say no to the offer, but they will present you with all the terms. And that's your opportunity to negotiate. That's where that non-compete and everything comes into play, and where you can stipulate, no, I want this much, and typically if it's your first book, your first contract, you don't have much negotiating room at all. And most margins are so slim, that you, even as an established traditional author doing digital first, you don't have a lot of wiggle room.
And so that's where you get the offer of your advance of how much they're going to pay you up front for the book.
So I never got an advance.
Okay.
I know that people do get advances still, even on digital first deals, but they are more and more rare, at least in romance.
Well, in the days of, we're paying $40,000 up front for this first book, those are pretty much done from what I hear. We're going to give you $5,000. You get $200 or $2,500 now and $2,500 when the book's delivered.
Yeah. The most I have heard of recently was $15,000 for a middle grade. And it was half now and half when you turn it in. But yeah.
And then the way the royalties work past that, there's, a negotiation, a percentage and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I didn't understand when I first got into this business was the idea of earning out.
Oh, yes. You don't get royalties until your royalties have totaled up to whatever your advance was. And then you get royalties. So the other thing to know about negotiating your contract, where you do have a little bit of wiggle room, is rights. So they're going to want worldwide rights. They'll certainly want English rights. You might consider keeping foreign rights. Some houses won't let you do that, but you can have your agent negotiate that and hopefully sell those foreign rights for you separately. So you're getting a different deal for those. You can also try to keep audio rights, but most of the time that's not going to be successful. You can pretty much always keep like merchandising rights. They will take all your rights if you let them. just because it's easier. And in case this is a runaway hit, then they own it all. But
Right.
keep whatever rights you can. Talk to your agent about that. You want to keep as much control as possible. And the thing that I never really was able to execute that I think is really important is remember that your agent is an employee of you. They work on your behalf. So while I kind of approached my agent relationship like a sage aunt who I relied on for everything, that's not the way to do it. I didn't have enough experience or self-confidence to assert myself and explain exactly what I wanted because I didn't really know. So I suggest being more informed than I was.
Well, and having a good relationship with them, just like we talk about how you've got to have a good relationship with the editors so that you can both have the same vision for the story. You want to make sure that your agent has the same vision for your career that you do, and that they're answering all of the questions that you have and putting your best interest first, basically.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
I have an excellent agent, and I think she did have my best interest at heart. I didn't know what to ask for and what to explain about what I saw for my own career. So that's an important, be your own agent. Hold on to that agency and remember that she works or he works for you.
yes. So advantages of traditional publishing.
So once your book is in the hands of an experienced house, you don't have to worry about a whole lot. They'll send it back to you to approve edits, to make changes if necessary, especially at the developmental stage. But mostly they'll check in with you to approve things like the cover, the dedication, that kind of stuff. They'll tell you what your release date is. They take care of all of the, blurb uploading
writing
to the sites and everything. They write the blurb. Technically they do marketing, but you will still need to build an author platform. You will still want to have a Facebook group of your own. You will still want to build your own website, create your own teasers. Probably, I think I had teasers sent to me from the publishers, so maybe not. And they did like blog tours and stuff like that. But a lot of the marketing falls to the authors at this point.
Well, and they can get you into bigger stores like Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart. Those
if you have a trade paperback deal.
Right. But those usually you can't get into as an indie. You can get into the online store.
You can get into those, but you have to be huge.
Right. It's a lot harder to get into Target as an indie. So disadvantages.
The disadvantages mostly, at least for me, were time. I wanted this to be a career. I wanted to be able to leave my day job. And when I was told that we were going to publish one book a year, I just didn't see how that could, unless it was a runaway hit, how it could possibly offset my income to the point where I could leave my job. Plus, I write fast and I could easily write more than one book a year. So it was really disappointing to me to have that be the expectation, because Nora Roberts publishes at least, 6 books a year. I was like, I could do that. And they're like, no, don't do that.
They're like, slow down.
Yeah. So you have very little control. If they want a change in the story that you don't agree with, and you you can always say no and try to argue for the merits of your story, but they bought it. So if they're going to publish it, they get to tell you what it's going to be. You don't really get to weigh in on the cover. I think I got to say I didn't like one of my covers, and they said, "Oh, that's too bad."
We're sorry you feel that way.
Yeah. So you give up a lot of control, but you also give up a lot of the stressful responsibility.
Well, and it's very competitive. It's very, very competitive to get the agent and get the deal and that kind of thing.
Well, so it's an ego boost if you manage to do all of that, because look, I'm a real author. I did all these things.
Mm-hmm. And the money gets split differently because there's the agent fee and the publisher fee and earning out and all of that kind of thing. So it gets divided up a little bit differently. Sorry,
the UPS man just dropped a gigantic box on my front porch, and I'm like, what is that? Did you order a table? Yes. So it can be, I think, for someone who doesn't want to worry about getting covers made and doing all the marketing and keeping track of their income and uploading all the books. And I think responsibly, you ought to still be tracking your sales and your income to the degree that you can. You don't get to see the dashboard the way that you do if you're on the indie side. So it's harder, but you just have less control.
Yes. And so let's talk about indie publishing.
Okay. Well, and one more advantage of traditional is that you have people in your corner. You're not out there by yourself trying to figure stuff out. You have people with a lot of experience explaining or suggesting which direction you might want to go with your career based on their knowledge. I found that to be a little stifling, and I didn't feel like I agreed with some of what I was being told. So that's, maybe if I had listened and I had agreed that I was going to write exactly what I was being told to write, I would have been more successful. I don't know, but it would have been too hard for me to do that. So I think indie gives you all the creative freedom that you want, which is a dagger that you can absolutely stab yourself with.
Right? It can go either way. I know that the perception of indie publishing has changed a lot in like the past 10 years, because I remember when I first started getting into going to writing groups and that kind of thing, the indie publishing was kind of looked down upon.
Oh, for sure.
Because it was, oh, well, you're not good enough to get an agent, and you're not good enough to be, traditionally published. And then it's really been kind of fascinating to watch the shift in the industry and to see people who were like, yeah, I absolutely am good enough to make all this money on my own, and I don't need you. So, and you hear things like, I think her name's Amanda Hawking, that was on.
I remember Amanda Hawking.
I think she was on Wattpad, which we talked about last week, that was like, I really don't need your publishing contract. I've got this completely under control,
and by the way, look how much money I have made this year.
Right. I make $1 bazillion. So the indie publishing is definitely, you get a lot more control. You get a lot more responsibility. And so let's talk about that pathway a little bit.
Okay. Well, so same thing. You start with a book, right? And well, actually, you start with research. You figure out what you want to write, who's writing it, who's doing it well, where are they marketing it, what other books is it next to on the, pretend Amazon bookshelf. And then once you've got your book, you then have to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this book? And the easy answer is I'm going to upload it to KDP. But you need a blurb, you need a cover, you need some kind of a marketing plan to let people know that this book exists. You need an author platform, you need beta readers, you need an editor. So suddenly you find that you have a whole team of people that you need in your corner, the ones that would have been supplied by the publishing house. And all of that is on you. And all of that costs money, or a lot of it does.
Upfront, yes.
Yeah. So you may be great with graphic design and decide that you can handle your own cover, which some people do fantastically well at. I'm not one of those people. That's not my skill set. You may be really great at editing or proofreading and feel like, okay, I need a developmental edit, but I can probably proofread on my own. So you might decide to kind of, balance out what you're going to spend where as you go into this process. But it can get really expensive. And then you have to format the book. And so, for instance, Vellum, which I use always, which is only available on Mac, unfortunately, it costs, I don't know, $250 or something so that you can have unlimited books and it auto updates. So you've got it for life. For me, that was a good investment. But if you have only written one book and you're not sure how prolific you plan to be, that maybe isn't a great investment. So you may pay somebody to do the formatting. So there's a lot to figure out sort of in the business realm of having written your book.
Well, and so the order would be, you write the book, you have a dev edit or a developmental edit for story and character, you make those revisions. Sometimes people have take a second pass at they have the dev editors take a second pass at it to make sure it still flows and that kind of thing. And then it would go to a line edit, which is your specialty.
Mm-hmm. So that is usually still looking at story, but also looking at much more closely at sentence structure and word choice and consistency. And I no longer I used to do kind of a combination of a copy edit / line edit. A copy edit's the same as a proofread. The words are used really interchangeably. But at this point, I really think that my skill set is better focused on sentence structure and story and consistency. So I leave commas and things generally to proofreaders. So you need that third step, which is the proofreader. Some people will do 2, but not 3. Some people will do all 3. It just depends on where your strengths lie and your experience level, I think.
Well, and Amanda made the point of many people who proofread want a proofreader, and that is true. It's really hard to edit your own stuff because
Definitely
your
true.
brain's going to fill in the gaps for you. Your brain knows what it's supposed to say. It's going to fill in the gaps. And so after you get the stories all in shape, it's all ready to go, then you need the cover design. You need a blurb. Nancy does specialize in writing blurbs.
You may be having your cover designed while you are still working on the book, because depending on who you hire to do that, they're booked up for months in advance.
Yes.
Like many editors are.
In some of I have some clients who buy their covers in advance, and you do have to buy the cover, who buy their covers in advance because then they have that image in their mind while they're writing too.
Well, true. So you might just buy some photos, or you might buy a pre-made cover. There's lots of different ways to do it. Lots of different price points. And then, so your blurb you may want to get done before you're quite done with the book too, depending on whether you're putting up a pre-order.
And then this whole time you're building your author platform, you're interacting on social media, you're putting out the buzz about the book, you're getting fans who are interested in your story. And so that's where having the blurb ready, where you can put that out there, and then you have your cover ready so you can do a cover reveal. All of that marketing thing, which may or may not come naturally to writers, is also in the background while you're writing your story and having it edited and doing revisions and that kind of thing.
Well, and I think the thing that is very strong in the indie community that maybe doesn't come naturally to a lot of writers because we tend to be more introverted is building a network. I do not think anyone in this world is successful completely by themselves. We all have author friends that help us, people who are willing to shout out our books, people who we help. And that network is what can really make or break you. The last thing you want to do is, go out and trash talk authors in your genre, or, there's a lot of things that happen in especially Romancelandia if you follow all of that drama, and you do not want to be a part of it. They always
it's
say
a very small world.
Will lift all ships. So I suggest keeping a very positive personality in public, always stepping up to help somebody if they need help, and never saying anything negative about anyone else if you can possibly avoid it. And hopefully you'll get the same kind of karma coming back to you because you need it.
Well, and you need that your author buddies too, so that you can privately text them and complain or ask for advice, that kind of thing, without putting it all out into the world. And it's like, if you hate your editor, that's fine. Hate your editor. Don't go onto Facebook, which has happened recently, and call your editor a name, and which did not happen either of us. I should say that. It's not either one of us. But don't go onto Facebook, start calling people names and start talking about how bad they are, because that could backfire on you. So
it's a really small world.
Yes, we all know each other. So you get your little group, and you can text your friend about how much you hate your editor all you want, but you still keep that public persona, because remember, you are creating a brand. And the brand is going to be different than who you are as a person. It's not that you have to change who you are, but you keep your brand and your personal thing. There's a delineation there.
Yeah. So that's something you have to think about, whether you're traditional or indie, is creating your brand and really trying to stay true to it. And so as an indie, possibly more importantly than as a traditional author, I mean, you'll be guided by your publisher if you're trad, you need to pick a lane. This is something Melanie Harlow talks about all the time. And something she said to me throughout my career, as I have done all kinds of random crap that is generally inadvisable for an indie author trying to manage a career. Pick a lane and stay in it. So if you're writing small town rom-coms, you write small town rom-coms. Don't suddenly decide that you're going to write paranormal and go, because your readers will be like, what? Wait, why are you doing that? I don't get it. So that's another thing you really have to think of as an indie author. You also have to be able to set your publishing tempo and let your readers know what to expect. You don't have to publish every 30 days, every 90 days, to answer Jane's question a little bit. But you do need to set a tempo that you can stick to, and all of your marketing is going to be geared around that tempo. So if you know you're publishing a book every 3 months, then you let your readers know that, and you start throwing out teasers, and you do your cover reveal, and you start talking about the characters and the setting, and get your reader group excited and talking about when the book's coming out. And then, for God's sake, publish the book when you said you were going to publish the book, or else all bets are off.
Explain the Amazon cliff. Jane had asked about the Amazon cliff too.
The Amazon cliff is like kind of like Bigfoot. We think it exists, but there's no proof except for lots of anecdotal evidence. So basically what this means is that people who publish frequently have seen a very gradual rise in, even like if I publish this book here, and then I publish a book 60 days later, and another book 60 days later, and another book 60 days later, this book suddenly is getting a whole bunch more attention. And Amazon's algorithms, supposedly, if they see that you publish frequently and that your newest books are getting interaction, they will start marketing your older books because you suddenly are producing a whole bunch of product, and they can work with that. If you publish one book every 3 years, they can't really do anything with that. So there's all kinds of websites, and you can follow David Gaughran and who else, Mark Dawson, and other people that talk about Amazon's algorithms and how they change constantly and what's going on now. And you can spend all year digging into that stuff. But the prevailing knowledge, or the prevailing thought, is that if you publish every 90 days, you kind of maximize the Amazon algorithms. And that may very well have changed since the last time I looked at it, and I might be spewing wrong facts. So correct me if somebody knows something more than me.
I want to point out to you, just to answer the question, you don't have to publish every 90 days. You can be successful as an indie author if you're setting the expectation of, like what you were just saying with your readers. If your readers know you publish a book every 6 months, and you have that pre-order link in the back of the book that you just finished, and they know that another book's going to come out in 6 months, they click that pre-order link, it randomly pops up for them whenever it gets out. It's setting the expectation. Because
you have other responsibilities, though, if you only publish every year or every 6 months, because you have to figure out how to keep your audience engaged, because there are other authors in your genre publishing more frequently. That's always going to be true. There's someone putting out a book every 15 days, probably, in your genre, and you can't control that. But what you can control is the readers that have already said, I like your book. Make sure they get on your newsletter list. Make sure that you are sending out your newsletter monthly at the very, very least frequent. And I would say weekly if you can. And have something that they come back for if it's not going to be a next book. And so your
special
brand,
content
becomes way more important. And that is what I have to say about that. So yes, you can be successful at a much slower tempo. You do not have to rapid release. And especially if you're wide, I think if you can establish a wide platform versus being in KU, it's a lot more forgiving, but it takes a lot longer to build. So you can pick off like wildfire.
Wide.
So wide is, everything outside of Amazon. And KU is Kindle Unlimited, which is Amazon's exclusive publishing platform where people read voraciously, and certain genres of romance tend to do really well. But there are a lot of people in there gaming that system because you get paid by the page read. And so they're publishing fast. They're putting out all kinds of stuff. You can also dig around on the internet and find all kinds of things that people think are happening in KU. My best advice, no matter what you choose to do, is write books that you want to write, that you know are good, and build a readership. It may take you 6 months. It may take you 6 years. God, it's taken me almost a decade now, and I still don't think I'm where I want to be. So it's not a sprint, guys.
I did want to point out to you, I'm going to disagree with you just slightly on the whole stay in your lane thing.
Okay.
Because you can write different things. You just got to be ready to market those individual different things.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, for example, Delancey and Lulu write different things.
And Delia and DL, and I have taken many journeys, and none of them have helped me build sustainability in my main pen name or income. I've had, fun little flash in the pan things here and there. And if I had chosen, I think for me, at least, I really only have the bandwidth to focus on 1 or 2 things at a time. Some people could maybe have 4 pen names and do it really well. I don't know. I do think if you're going to write outside your main genre, you need a different pen name.
Or you need to be sure that you're setting your readers up for that. The readers need to know, because there's even tons of traditional authors who have changed from writing like romantic suspense or even erotic romance to they write contemporary, or they're, dabbling over here. Maybe they started off writing contemporary. Now they're dabbling over here in the suspense and thriller thing. But it's more preparing the readers, making sure the readers still know where to find you and that you don't surprise them.
Yes,
like they would not want to pick up a Delancey Stewart book, which is known for Mr. Match and is really a fun rom-com. And suddenly they're reading some cry your eyes out, there's a serial killer after me book, because that's not what they expected. So you have to be sure that you're setting up the expectations.
Well, and you do that by putting a different cover. Like the cover has to scream, this is not your typical rom-com.
You have to let them know.
Yeah.
So and advantages of indie.
Freedom, creative freedom, business freedom. The sky's the limit, right? Anything is possible. You hear success stories every day. If you're in 20 books to 50K, if you follow Mark Dawson, it's also, that was not an advantage. I was going to go the other way, but let's see what else. Fantastic community.
Much faster. Much faster than traditional publishing. And yes, an amazing community.
As fast as you can write. Yeah. Tons of support if you're looking for it, if you want it. There's a million podcasts. There's tons of websites. There's all kinds of books. There's lots and lots of people who are willing to tell you what they've learned. Melanie Harlow has a fantastic group called Harlot Authors, where she's basically laying out how she got where she is. It's amazing. It's the most, at least in romance, it's the most willing community I have ever encountered, where really successful people are willing to turn around and explain to you how they got where they are and how you can get there. All that said, it's a lot of work and it's very difficult. And if it was that easy, hell, I would be Pippa Grant. But
well, we all want to be Pippa Grant.
I should do, and I'm still not Pippa Grant. So,
well, and I find that our clients who are extremely successful in indie publishing have basically created their own little mini publishing house. Mm-hmm. Like they have their editors, which are, since I'm talking about our clients, they're us and we're awesome, but they have their editors and they have their cover designer that they love, and they have the beta readers, or they have their ARC reading group, which we didn't even touch on, but they have their, ARC readers who will put out the blog post and do the pre-reviews and all that kind of stuff. They've got that all established. Mm-hmm. And they're running that kind of like its own little publishing house. And so it does take a lot of work, and it does take a little bit of business sense.
Yep. And if you're someone like me, I don't know if you guys all know this, but I still have a day job. So, and it's not Evident Ink. So there's only so much time in the day, and you have to be able to delegate some of the stuff. So a lot of us have PAs or publicists, or, someone that we pay to be in our corner who carries a lot of the stuff that we don't have time or the skill to carry.
Well, and that's one of the disadvantages of it. Does cost money up front. You are investing in your career, and sometimes you've got to figure out if you're in the position to do that or not.
Yeah. And all that time that you would have spent waiting, you are spending pouring through dashboards and uploading books and changing covers and talking to your designer, and your family will hate you if you are not careful. So
I'm going to say, you're making this sound like it's bad. It's not bad. It's good. You can do it.
It's amazing to be in control. And I found after giving up control, because I did indie and then I was like, no, I just want someone else to be in charge of everything. I didn't want that at all. When I got that, I was like, I hate this.
That's
I
not
just
a
want to be
very
in charge.
Nancy attitude
No,
right there.
I just
not
like I knew I wasn't being successful, and so I wanted to see if I could be successful some other way. But having no control doesn't work well for me. So know yourself, I guess.
Yes. Okay. And then
Jennifer says, "Do y'all have cover artists you can recommend?" There's a lot. If you're looking for budget, I suggest looking at some of the pre-made sites to start with. But if you want a custom cover, your best bet is to figure out what genre you're working in. Go look at some of the covers that other authors in that genre have, and then Facebook message them or post on their wall or something and ask if they would mind sharing who designs their covers. Usually they're happy to refer their designer, because most of them are freelance and are always happy for business. I personally, my PA does all my covers, and I know she does sometimes work for other people. So if you are interested in covers that look like mine, you're welcome to reach to me, and I'll happily ask her if she's willing to take more work. I also have had JC De Lorenzo at Sweet and Spicy Designs, I think that's the name of the shop, do some of my covers. She did the original Single Tree covers, and she did all the Mr. Match covers. So also, I think, very good. And that's about the best I can give you there.
Yeah, I have a resource list of some cover artists that my clients have used and we're very happy with. So Jennifer, if you email me, I can get you that. Amanda put a comment that says, with the covers, some cover artists want control of their work, so check your contract with them so you have control over the file itself.
Yeah,
so
getting the actual Photoshop file sometimes is way more expensive than just getting the cover. But you kind of need it in case you ever have to make changes, unless you have a great relationship with them and can just go back to them and be like, hey, I want to try a different font, or, whatever.
Yes. So I think we covered this pretty thoroughly, actually. It was kind of a speed run, but we hopefully presented both sides of things. And this is just touching the surface. You've got to do your own research on all aspects of it. But like Nancy was pointing out, especially the indie community is very supportive. And so you can find all sorts of Facebook groups and other kind of, I don't do Twitter anymore, so I can't recommend any hashtags, but I know that Instagram has some groups too of people who were like, oh no, I tried this and it didn't work, so don't do that, but do this. And you can go in and ask questions and that kind of thing to really, and you can also find that for people who are trying to get traditionally published as well. Right. Query Tracker has a forum feature where people talk about, okay, I queried this person. How long did it take you to get an answer back? Or, okay, this was the response I got. Is this a form letter? Yes, that's the same response I got. And so you look for that community because you need that support.
Definitely.
And then, so coming up next week is our last show until August. And it's going to be so much fun because you get to be Delancey next week.
Woo-hoo. Yeah, I'll change my name.
we're gonna have Marika here, and we're talking about co-writing, and I'm excited about that. That's going to be fun.
Which is actually, we are not experts, but we'll talk about our journey, and this is all new to us, but it's been so much fun. And I think if you are considering co-writing, come listen, because we have a few tips, and we've talked to lots of people as we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. So should be fun. And Delrica, sorry, Marika is amazing. Delrica's our hashtag.
And then I love that. That's like y'all's ship name, Delrica. And then we will be gone because I have a kid graduating from high school May 30th. Another kid who finished her freshman year of college today.
Ooh.
I'm suddenly feeling very old. But we have that, and then we're both going to be finding places to live. So that's what we have coming up.
Yes. So we'll be painting all summer, and we'll see you in August. But
Yes.
Come next week.
Come next week. So thank y'all for hanging out, and we will see you later.
Jenny Simon, I just saw you. I didn't know you were here. Sorry. All right, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys. I'm like waiting for it to end, but I have to push the button.